kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes. Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I am here with my incredible co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and together...
Connoisseur of cough drops. I must didn't answer because I was busy rolling my cough drop from him out.
Aha, I see. So, well, I'm glad you got them. So, because it's important not to cough during a radio program if you can avoid it. So together, Rebecca and I are about to craft an hour of radio called For a Green Future. And For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about it in the ways that it affects you and your family, your wealth, your health, your happiness, and the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and neighbors and all the humans and other critters and plants on this wonderful planet that we call Earth. And we have a good show lined up for you today, as we do every week. First, we're just going to chat for a little bit for the next 15 minutes or so. And you can call in and join us at any time at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. Or you can text at any time also at 419-973-5841, and we will read your text on the air. And then after our little chat session here, we have an interview, a triumphant interview with one of our good friends from the Center for Biological Diversity, Collette Adkins, because we are going to be talking about something we reported on last week, which was the decision by a federal court to relist the wolves as endangered species in most of the United States of America. And yeah, I know I'm covering this 2 weeks in a row, but
Stuff keeps happening.
Stuff keeps happening, and it's so seldom that environmentalists just get like really good news that I like to dwell on it.
We are stoked about this.
Yeah.
We're taking our wins where we can get them.
Right. And then we'll hear from our advertisers and patrons, and then we'll hear from Rebecca, who will be talking a little bit about an interesting topic. And it's on to ecological news. And as I said, hopefully at some point we'll be hearing from you during this hour, 877-909-1007. Okay, so on the way in this morning, I noticed something I wanted to mention, and that is that the ice has broken on the Maumee River, which you wouldn't think it would because it's been so cold, but the sun is getting higher even as our temperatures are lower. And it's really the sun on the ice, especially when it gets like soot and dark stuff on it, that really pushes that thawing. It's kind of an interesting story. It's something dramatic that happens every year, the ice breaking on the Maumee. I remember my wife and I were once walking along on the trail, the towpath trail there in Maumee, when the ice broke. I mean, when there was all of a sudden there was this tremendous cracking noise. And
did you have the impulse to back way the heck up, just in case?
Yeah, it inspired caution, right?
No
Definitely
doubt,
to see these huge chunks of ice just sort of rear up into the air in slow motion with like the jagged points and stuff. And
in some communities, I think there are sort of yearly betting pools about when the ice is going to break up.
Yeah, and that's a fun thing, and then the ice gets pushed all over, so it can like push up onto shore and push over trees and things.
Oh my!
Yeah, it's very dramatic. And if anybody has a dramatic ice breaking up story from please call in and share it with us at 877-909-1007. But So the ice is broken, and you can see the river again. But thinking about that reminded me of something that's happened in Maumee along that towpath trail that I wanted to talk about a little bit here, and it kind of ties in with a later ecological news story. So one of the things we loved about the towpath trail there, which was, it used to be where the donkeys and the the minders would walk that were putting barges onto the Erie Canal, or not the Erie Canal, the
Mules, not donkeys.
Mules, right? That's right.
And they are specially suited to towpaths because towpaths wash out a lot, and mules. The reason mules have a reputation for being stubborn is that if they feel uncertain about the path ahead of them, they will stop. Whereas a horse will keep going ahead because you told it to keep going ahead.
I see.
And it's a lot of work getting horses out of canals.
Yeah, or mules. So, I did not know that.
So you want something that can think for itself.
Right.
And will.
Cool. But there's it's a beautiful little park, and there's a lock there, the remains of a lock that is where the canal used to connect with the river, and so that's where the barges would come, off.
Are you talking about side cut?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But way back at the very start there in Maumee.
Right.
So,
where it breaks off from, like, the canal originally came down, like, I think through Manhattan.
Okay, yeah.
And then down, like, I think Michigan. At some point, it ran under what is now the courthouse of the center of Toledo, and then it went down what is now the Anthony Wayne Trail, which is built over the remains of the canal.
Right. Yeah.
And then it veers off into Maumee and then actually starts running parallel to the river.
Right. So that's the part I'm talking about.
Now.
So, unfortunately, my sons and I went for a walk down in that park back in December, right after my wife passed, and they have destroyed it. They have. It used to have all kinds of wild vegetation. It had trees. It had shrubs. They've shaved it all down, and
Ew.
now it is lawn. And,
great.
And I just want to say this urge to turn parks into lawns really has to be resisted and fought against. And it was funny because, as we walked along there, historically there was this one house that just insisted on, like, mowing all the way down to the river because the park abuts on a bunch of backyards of people. And so these people decided, well, we own all the way to the river. And so you'd be walking along, there'd be trees and birds and animals and stuff. And then you'd come to this one section where these people had just, like, shaved it down. And one big difference in their section was that the river was actually eroding much faster there because you remove the trees and the vegetation and the riverbank collapses. So
those are insulation against erosion.
So my sons and I were walking along here, just like really unhappy that they cut down all the vegetation, and we passed this couple coming towards us that they were just grinning from ear to ear, and I was like, what are they so happy about? And then they got to that lawn that had historically shaved it, and they turned that was their house. So they were just tickled pink that the city had decided to turn, what was a vibrant natural area into grass, and probably grass that they're going to spray. And
yeah, because then you got to make it look nice and green, since all you got is grass to offer in your park.
Right. And what makes it really sad is that for the first time on that walk, as we were walking along, I noticed that there were a whole bunch of nests, mud nests that were stuck to the underside of the bridge there. Aww. Where it crosses from Maumee to Perrysburg. And I believe those are cliff swallow nests.
Yep.
Because that's how they operate. They make these upside down mud nests that and then they live off the insects. And one effect of getting rid of all the vegetation and turning everything into lawn is that you reduce the number of insects. So this budding brand new colony of cliff swallows that, they're a beautiful bird, very colorful, and they dodge in and out catching insects. They fly amazing routes, but it could be that colony of cliff swallows will fail now because there's not enough bugs to eat because we've turned what was a natural area into a lawn. So
yeah, you walk over the MLK Cherry Street Bridge in Toledo. If you stop and look over the railing for a minute, almost certainly in the summer, a little birdie will come and hover in your face and make sort of little stabby feints at your face. to try and intimidate you from going away from its territory.
Oh, so there's cliff swallows under that bridge too.
Yepers.
Ah, cool.
Also, on the docks on the east side where there's the restaurants and stuff, they usually put down like a floating dock for the right by the restaurants for the boats in the summer.
Right.
And if you go on that and go out in the end and sit under the stairs, there's usually a cliff dauber nest under there too, as well as many, many, many spiders. Uh-huh. So if you really can't handle spiders, you're not going to be able to see the cliff dauber's nest.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure.
If you just sit there and be quiet, it'll like come in and out and sort of make little gestures at its nest and fly away again like it's feeding something.
Yeah, I think that I could sit and watch cliff swallows for hours just because they're so. Such skillful flyers, and they're such beautiful
they can hover
birds,
like a helicopter. So. It's crazy.
Yeah. So hopefully that colony will be able to survive, even though whoever decided that in Maumee decided to wreck their habitat. So, but hopefully they'll be able to make it anyway. So, but one thing that did make it, and something that we reported on last week, and we're ready to go with a triumphal interview with Collette Adkins. And so, Josh, let's go ahead and run that interview that talks about saving the wolves in the lower 48 states. All right. Hello, and welcome to For a Green Future. Once again, could you please share with us your name and your title?
My name is Collette Adkins. I'm the Carnivore Conservation Director and a senior attorney with the Center for Biological Diversity.
Okay, great. And I am calling you on this week and having you on the show because there's a cause to celebrate, is there not?
Yes, I'm just so very excited that a federal judge restored protections to gray wolves across most of the country. Places like the Great Lakes and the West Coast states and the Southern Rockies, northeastern United States all have protections under the Endangered Species Act again.
That's amazing. So we might actually have hope of seeing a wolf someday right here in Ohio then.
Yeah, maybe so. It sure would be amazing. And wolves every once in a while do make their way through Ohio, but, no breeding populations, but they can travel, hundreds of miles, and I do hope someday that even there in Ohio you might have wolves.
Yeah, I think that would be amazing to see a wolf. And when people hear about the possibility of seeing wolves, sometimes they get intimidated or even scared. But there's no reason for people to be afraid of wolves, is there?
Oh, there sure isn't. I mean, what a treat to be able to see a wolf in the wild, and for sure they're afraid of people. They're elusive and shy animals that I live in Minnesota, which has had one of the biggest populations of wolves since they were even first listed, and I've only once ever seen a wolf in Minnesota, and I've tried my hardest. So it's just a big treat. You should be very happy if you run across one.
All right, I'll be keeping my eyes open now. So this restoration of Endangered Species Act status means that now the Fish and Wildlife Service has to actually figure out how they can restore wolves to their whole range, right? Eventually.
Well, I sure hope that the Fish and Wildlife Service takes this court ruling as a sign that they finally do need to really work on restoring wolves to additional places, but I am a bit skeptical. I mean, the Fish and Wildlife Service has been just trying to prematurely remove protections for wolves, for a couple decades now, and they've just lost repeatedly in the courts, and yet they just go back and remove protections again. But I'll try to be hopeful here and hope that this puts them on the right path.
All right. And so, is this one of the biggest victories you've seen in your career so far?
It really is. I mean, this is one of those wins where there are, immediate on-the-ground implications. In areas where people could shoot wolves dead, they're fully protected now. And if I look back at what happened in the last year under state management, for example, in Wisconsin, where more than 200 wolves were killed in 3 days, and that's illegal now. Wolves can only be killed in a defense of human life, except for in Minnesota, where they have threatened status, which is just a little bit less because they're more abundant here in Minnesota where I live. And here, wolves that are confirmed to be attacking livestock can be killed by government agents. But other than that, no hunting, no trapping, no shooting by private landowners.
Oh, that's wonderful. So now this covers 44 out of the 50 states, right? There's still a few states that don't have to have them as endangered.
Yeah, the rule that was challenged in this court case where we had the win, that rule didn't affect wolves in the northern Rocky Mountains region. So like Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming are the core states there, around Yellowstone National Park, because that area was listed, or it was delisted back in 2011 through a congressional rider. So those wolves still are under state management. Although one of the things that my organization and others are working for is to restate protections in that area as well. And we did file an Endangered Species Act listing petition last summer. And in September, the Fish and Wildlife Service agreed with us that relisting may be warranted in that area, and now they're doing a full status review and have opened a public comment period.
Oh, there's a public comment period open right now on it.
Yes, there is. Yep. So regulations.gov is the place to go, and you could type in, gray wolves, and probably would be able to get the right docket there where you can submit comments in support of restoring protections for wolves in the northern Rocky Mountains.
Okay, how long have we got? How long is this open?
It's open until the service makes its new decision, and under law, they're required to make it within a year of the listing petition, which was filed at the end of May. So we've still got some time.
Okay. I guess even the wolf pack that is part of the wolf pack in Yellowstone National Park has been killed in the last year, right, from hunting in Montana?
Yeah, there's been a record number of wolves killed right outside of Yellowstone National Park. Last I heard, there have been 24 of the park's about 125 wolves killed just this 1 year. And yeah, that's much higher than's ever experienced before. And that's because Montana has liberalized their wolf hunting regulations just this summer to make it so much easier for people to kill wolves that just step over the border of the park. It's really heartbreaking that these wolves that really have international fame and are just beloved by so many people and famous photographs have just been just reduced to nothing but a pile of bloody fur because they step outside the park's borders. It's really awful.
Yeah, and even in terms of economics, it's a loss because millions of people travel to hoping to see a wild wolf in Yellowstone, and if you reduce the number of wild wolves, you're gonna hurt that trade.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's been huge outrage from small business owners that depend on the ecotourism from wildlife watchers, as well as the superintendent of Yellowstone National Park, who sent a letter to Deb Haaland, the Secretary of the Interior, urging the relisting of wolves there, with the argument that the bordering states here just haven't shown themselves capable of sustainably managing wolves here around Yellowstone.
All right. Well, let's hope we get this restored for all 50 states. And that you mentioned a lot of people. There were a lot of people who didn't want this to happen, right? As I recall it, like 1.8 million people opposed the initial delisting, and then a lot of people were in on this together on this fight to relist in the 44 states.
Yeah, so many people care about wolves. More people commented on that proposed delisting rule than any other rule in the history of the Endangered Species Act. Just a huge amount of comments in opposition to removing wolf protections. But under the Trump administration, they went forward with the delisting anyway. It had been my position all along that this was not just bad public policy, but illegal. And a federal judge has agreed and set aside that delisting rule as a violation of the Endangered Species Act.
Well, again, congratulations on this great victory. And so what's the next big battle that you folks are waging over there at Center for Biological Diversity?
Well, right now with wolves, it really is fighting to get the Northern Rocky Mountain wolves protected. We're also really concerned about grizzly bears. Really, it seems like what has happened with wolves has happened with grizzly bears too. And right now, grizzly bears are fully protected out west as threatened, but we're really concerned that the Fish and Wildlife Service might try to remove protections around Yellowstone again, and we'll be ready to fight that. So right now we're trying to rally public support for grizzly bear protections as well. One thing that's been really amazing is to see just how many people really do recognize these large carnivores as being, so very ecologically important, but just such magnificent creatures, that deserve better than to be hunted and trapped. And there's just so many organizations, so many individual people that are working together on this fight that's leaving me with a lot of hope.
That's pretty much what I wanted to ask you about, and just once again say great job. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I appreciate the congratulations and do want to point out that there just have been so many people working together on this. Earth Justice is a fantastic environmental law firm. They represented the center in this case. And, it's one of these cases that was the result of work by scientists, who found the scientific articles that show that wolves still need protection based on the threats that they experience, and the lawyers using that science to put together the best legal arguments. And then now with the Northern Rocky Mountain wolf fight, it really is a fight of public policy where we're really just trying to get everyone's voice in on behalf of the wolf. And it really is one of these things where when everyone works together, you can get to the result that you want.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Collette. And there we go. That was our interview with Collette Adkins. So what do you think? Are you happy that the wolf is protected again in 44 states? Or are you kind of like, now you're like kind of scared and thinking about adding lights to your backyard or something? Give us a call at 877-909-1007.
I'm already scared of the pit bulls in my neighborhood. What's the difference between they'll just get in fights with the wolves or the wolves come back? I don't know. That would be interesting.
That is the point. I mean, there has never been a documented wolf attack in North America, but there's been tens of thousands of documented dog attacks. I mean,
yep,
dogs attack people all the time, but
we got the coyote vest on the dog when he goes out anyway because of the pit bull. So
the coyote vest,
yes.
the punk rock 80s thing with the spikes.
Yes,
yeah.
He looks so very buckaroo banzai. It's great.
Okay, well, so that brings us to the next part of our show, which is hearing from our advertisers and patrons. For Green Futures, brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead people on outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy, from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. And there's several ways to find out what's going on down there in the Wood County Park District. One is to check their website, which is simply wcparks.org. You can also call them at 419-353-1897. And then they have an app. You can go to the App Store and search for WC Parks and put that on your phone, and you can just keep up with everything. That's how I do it. I use the app. And then, of course, they're also on, I have an amazing presence on all the other social media, Facebook, Instagram, I think TikTok. I'm not sure if they have a TikTok or not. Maybe somebody could call in and tell me. But that's the Wood County Park District. And For a Green Future is also brought to you by our wonderful patrons. And these are people who have gone to patreon.com. They searched for a Green Future. Up popped our page, and they just picked a monthly membership that meets their budget. And thankfully, a little bit comes out of their account every month and comes over to us. And that's how we could afford to stay on the air. It's amazing, this the support we're getting from people. And we could definitely use more patrons, though. We really need some more patrons. So if you would like to help support For a Green Future, just go to patreon.com and search for a Green Future.
Patrons are the coolest.
They are. Okay, Rebecca, now we come to your part of the show. And you want to, basically, you're wanting to open a discussion, I guess.
Kind of, yeah. So one of my serious intellectual weaknesses is that I do actually decide how I feel about major issues or moral problems based on facts and concepts, which I have heard about and learned, but then I forget the various facts and concepts which I have learned and just remember the decision. Which makes it hard to explain the decision later to other people.
Okay.
So that's a problem. So, I wanted to, I sort of have a rough idea what environmentalism is. I basically know, but if somebody asked me very quickly to put into words, I'm not sure exactly what I'd say, because it's just become something in my head that I have vague positive connotations towards,
Mm-hmm.
So I want to do the actual definition of environmentalism, which the first definition I ran across was concern and about an action aimed at protecting the environment. So this begs the question, well, how do we define the environment? Somebody, anyway, thinks that it's all living and non-living things occurring naturally. So that would sort of include things like, wind, rivers, technically not alive, although they have a lot of life in them to the point where they almost are, rock formations, that kind of thing. So yeah, basically, it's concern or action aimed at protecting all living and non-living things occurring naturally. It's about the optimization of conditions in the biosphere for all living things by reducing harmful interference with nature, which gets us into a tricky area where are human beings natural or aren't we? We're very interfery. That's seems to be part of our thing. We're very interfery. And I think that those are my words, and I also feel like environment. Okay, so we're trying to make things best they can be for all living things. Sorry, Joe had something to say.
Well, I just said I believe interfery is your word. I think
that's definitely
you can
my
claim
word.
That word.
Webster has not caught on is lagging behind my genius. So yeah, but sort of implied in the modern environmentalist movement is the idea that natural systems are ancient and complex, and they mostly do best when we leave them alone. So, it's not most environmentalism that environmentalists recognize is is not about, I just thought of this nifty gadget that's going to improve nature tremendously,
Mm-hmm.
Which is sort of a key concept. But I feel like it's also about attempting to create a society in which humans can thrive without negatively affecting other species and natural systems. That would be another part of the definition. Which is interesting because it sort of implies the realization that humans have a tendency to function as an invasive species and to overwhelm and destroy other species and environments. Maybe that's not the predominant. We didn't do this for thousands of years, We got along without doing this. And then suddenly at some point of our development, it became part of how we function a lot. Like, when I think about environmentalism and humans, I think about how whenever I go to the beach, what I want to do is dig little channels and make a fort at the edge of the water, and then try to protect the fort from the water, and dig holes, make sandcastles. Like, it's almost like, oh, I want to do something fun, I'm going to change the environment, which is perfectly harmless, when you're in a place where the ocean or the lake is going to erase everything you do. But it's kind of a human impulse that is problematic and maybe part of human nature. So you could sort of conceptualize environmentalism as trying to sort of overcome or check that impulse, make sure we're actually doing something important. And I guess implicit in it also would be the idea that you can't destroy a natural system without hurting yourself, ultimately. And small changes can very easily have a big impact on a natural system. So what we do a lot as human beings is we hurt ourselves trying to optimize our quality of life. We look at nature and are like, hey, this could even be even better. And whoops, lots of unforeseen consequences all of a sudden. I feel like it also implies a long-term approach to optimizing our life conditions instead of just, well, this would be fun and happy right now. It involves thinking many generations ahead instead of just what's going to make my life better right now.
All right. Well,
are we gonna?
Well, we do have a caller.
I have like a little bit more here.
Okay, go ahead, finish up.
So it turns out like there's a legitimate philosophical debate within the environmentalist movement apparently between anthropocentrism and ecocentrism. Anthropocentrism being that we're motivated to take care of the environment because the degradation of the environment ultimately negatively affects humans, and ecocentrism being that non-human life forms and natural objects and systems have intrinsic value. Which is interesting, but I feel like we're almost getting to the point where our impact on the environment is so serious that the debate's becoming irrelevant because we've essentially just set our own house on fire. So that's my thing. We can talk to the caller now, or people could express opinions or whatever. Well,
the definition of environmentalist is very fuzzy, as you're suggesting, and my experience is that even the most environmentally destructive people consider themselves environmentalists because they do something, right, yeah. I remember there was a woman who opposed the plastic...
Stop talking about me, Joe.
The plastic bag. No, not you.
I don't know, maybe kind of me.
There was a woman who opposed the plastic bag ban that we tried to get through in Bowling Green, and she started out her tirade by saying, I compost every little bit of kitchen scrap, and so let's put plastic in the environment. And I have this terrible example.
The environment is not like God. It doesn't like register your good intentions.
Yeah, it's not but I did know a fella who ran a factory.
It's not like, her heart is pure, so we won't destroy the world. No, it will.
Yeah.
So well.
And his factory was actually fairly polluting, but he considered himself an environmentalist because he didn't use the toilet. He actually peed into like a cup and then like tossed it out his office window, and he thought
that's not a thing, is it? Because I'm not doing that.
No, it's not a thing.
I didn't think it was.
But he was very proud that the grass under his window was much greener because of the nitrogen he was putting into the soil. But
all right,
and so he considered himself an environmentalist, but he was not.
Yeah, no, that's not how you do it.
No, it isn't.
Thank God.
All right. Anyway, we have a caller. So, as a caller, thanks for being so patient. Let's go ahead. You're on the line.
Okay. You were talking before about the shorelines and how people have changed it to make it look like a lawn or whatever their idea is. It's beautiful, right? So I had this acquaintance that's fortunate enough to own property that has a pond on it, and I went there in the summer last year, and there was this, I don't know, probably about 6 or 8 foot space around the edge of the perimeter of the thing that was all dead. And I said, what happened here? And she said, well, I had the lawn cutter spray something on there.
Oh.
And I said, and they got frogs and everything there. And she had him spray Roundup.
Oh. man.
Oh.
And even in, this was right on the edge of and this person is educated as a kid who she wouldn't let eat anything non-organic, all this stuff. And I said, do you know that that's a carcinogen that you just had them spray on there? Kills everything. It doesn't just kill your weeds, even though the weeds are supposed to be there. Oh, listen, she didn't even know that. And
wow.
This is how uninformed people are and how much they live in a bubble. But this Roundup is really something that really we don't need that stuff, and it's banned everywhere else in the world. And I think that the German company makes it. I'm pretty sure they probably can't use it in Germany. So
probably not.
I would like to, try and bring attention to this poison, which I see people spraying it everywhere. They spray it, they're walking around their yard spraying it. It's getting on their feet, and they don't have any idea what they're doing.
No, they don't. And the reason I think people feel that way is because all the advertising, all the propaganda, quote unquote, around things like Roundup is they associate it with greenness and healthy, quote unquote, healthy lawns.
Big Ag constantly says it. Roundup, because they even have now, I think, genetically engineered some of the seed to be Roundup ready, which means it can sustain. It won't be killed by Roundup, which means that probably not going to dissipate very well in your gut. But, well, whatever. That's a whole other thing. But
yeah.
All right. Well, that is my whole beef.
Well,
but
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. We're happy to be here for you as a way for you to vent. and hopefully maybe you'll have discouraged somebody else who was planning to spray Roundup around their pond.
Trying to get attention of people, elected officials about it, but nobody seems to care. I think there's probably too much money coming from those companies and, to support politicians. I don't know. But
so anybody with a small dog hates that stuff with a burning, fiery passion.
Oh, yeah.
My yard doesn't have anything on it. I'm trying to get it included in the oak openings. There's a kind of a thing you can do, and because I'm in that kind of line there. But anyway.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the call. All right. And so we are off to our ecological news segment.
All right.
And here we go. Top story. You might have heard about this, but you might not have. There was a huge storm in England, and it was called. They named it Eunice. I'm apologies to anybody who's actually named Eunice out there, but they had the highest recorded winds ever in England at 122 miles per hour, and this was technically this wasn't a hurricane.
Yowie.
Even though, because we're not in hurricane season, and it formed in the mid-Atlantic, it didn't form, typically hurricanes form down in the south, off the coast of Africa, and then kind of spin their way up into the North Atlantic. But this one formed in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and just headed straight for England and blasted it, and it cut out power to hundreds of thousands of people. It actually stopped the trains because
and British trains are pretty tough.
Yeah, but so many trees got blown down across tracks that they had to. People got stranded. I had a friend who's in England right now, and he couldn't get back into London. He had to spend the night at a friend's house because the trains were all stopped. Then there was no way to get into the city.
You don't think of Great Britain having a lot of hurricanes, do you?
No, Britain's climate, normally is moderated by the current there, what do they call that? The north-south current that goes along the
North Atlantic
current.
Something we can't remember now.
Yeah, we're too old. That's the problem. But it has to do with commerce.
Smart young people or old people who have a neuron which is fired miraculously. Please call us and let us know.
the trade winds. I don't remember. Anyway,
something.
Anyway, it looks like that nice warm current from the Gulf of Mexico that normally keeps Britain's climate so temperate. It looks like that current is starting to break down. For a number of reasons. We've talked about it before. There's the salinity problem because all that ice putting fresh water into the ocean from the Greenland glaciers slows that current down, and the temperature differences are getting all messed up because it's not as cold up further north. That's warming, and so all these things that drove that current, whose
You
name...
need temperature contrast to make air and water move.
Yes, that's what drives everything. So all the factors that drive that current are all under assault by global warming. And so now Britain is starting to get some of these horrible storms. And about 15 people across Europe were killed by it, depending on which story you read.
You think of Britain as having a lot of very high cliffs, and so that everything is up high, so at least they wouldn't get tsunamis and storm surges very much. I wonder if that's true, or if it's just something I got from murder mystery set in Great Britain.
Well, it depends on where you are.
Right. Everything depends on where you are.
Yeah, they have both. They have some very high cliffs.
Right.
And they also have some very low shorelines that were just inundated because the winds come and blowing the ocean in.
Jane Austen and Miss Marple, it's always high cliffs. Otherwise, how can people be pushed off of them?
Right. That's the most dramatic, or fling themselves off of them in despair, right? Which I guess there's a lot of in Britain, but but anyway,
much like America.
So, but just another storm, the global warming enhanced storm that should not have happened. And these things are, as we have predicted for 20 plus years, these things are going to become more and more common. All right, that was Storm Eunice. On to our next story, and this is an update from last week's story. Last week we had Pat Morita come on and tell us all about the horrible HB 434, which is the Irradiate Ohio Act.
Oh boy.
Which would create a quote-unquote authority that would be ungoverned by any democratically elected body. It would be free from control by governor's office or the legislature, and it would have full authority over all matters radioactive in Ohio. So
it would just kind of be formally turning over the entire state to the nuclear industry.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
that's
as a sort of a fiefdom.
Right.
Super.
Right. Here you are.
Yeah.
Here you go, and you could raise money, and you could sell bonds, and you can use a public eminent domain to take property away from people, and you can put nuclear waste wherever you want to. Go for it, authority.
Oh boy.
And it's a horrible bill. And unfortunately, I have to report that it has passed out of committee.
Oh,
and
crap.
so the next step is getting voted on by the full House. I did call the chair of the committee, as Pat Morita asked us to last week. And I'm afraid I got a little bit impassioned because I was like, this is House Bill 6 all over again. And literally...
Only worse, possibly.
Yeah, possibly even worse. And literally the co-sponsors on this bill are a who's who of who was bought by First Energy. We reported on that before, that House Bill 6 happened because First Energy plowed tens of thousands of dollars into the campaigns of 11 specific legislators in the House, who then, their main task once they got in was to push House Bill 6. And those people are all there right at the top of that line. And one of the main people, the main sponsor of this, is a fellow named Dick Stein, who was the chair of the House Energy Subcommittee, where I testified against House Bill 6 when it was first introduced to the House. And he is just horrible. He's one of these...
Probably doesn't care for you either at this point.
Probably not.
You've made yourself unpopular with people like him.
Well, yeah, but he's one of these, radiation must be good for you kind of people. He's like touting the wonders of nuclear medicine to justify creating nuclear waste like plutonium and uranium and just totally...
Okay, but, gallbladder operations are good, but everyone does not need one.
Right.
Just for laughs.
Well,
no.
Well, and, nuclear medicine, quote unquote, has been around for going on 70 years now, and it has not cured cancer.
Yeah.
And it will never cure cancer. It is not, it's a treatment, but what we need to do is switch over to studying immunotherapies that actually do hold promise of literally curing cancer, because the whole nuclear medicine thing, the idea that you're going to cure something that is a result of cellular damage by using substances that cause cellular damage that whole philosophy is wrong. And so
that really seems just like a mighty rushing motherload of unintended consequences that could happen there.
Yeah, it is. And so there's about there's 22 co-sponsors on this bill. 21 Democrats, but 21 Republicans, excuse me. But there is one Democrat, which reminds us that, House Bill 6 wouldn't have passed without Democrat Party
Yepers.
support. And the one Democrat...
No, thank you for that.
Yeah, the one Democrat's a fellow named Michael Sheehy. And if you click on his House page, you see something. He's got a quote there. Roughly, this is not word for word, but it's pretty close. The vitality of our state's most precious resource is linked to economic growth and safe, healthy families. And I have to tell the representative that if you put radioactive stuff into the environment, which would be the inevitable result of trying to force nuclear dumps into the state of Ohio, which is not suited for nuclear dumps geologically, you're not going to have safe and healthy families. You're going to have...
To quote Douglas Adams, this is some new definition of the word safe, which I'm not familiar with.
Right. So it's not too late to call your legislator.
It's like aloha. It means two things that are like opposites. Hello, goodbye.
Yeah, safe
and extremely dangerous.
Yeah, we have to put safe in quotes and healthy in quotes.
Yeah, there you go.
Just underline families. Yeah, so it's not too late to call our legislators and tell them, if this comes up for a vote, this looks like House Bill 6 all over again. Just don't do it. Don't put us all through that trauma again. But that's the update on House Bill 434. Next environmental story. This one comes to us from Brazil. There is a city of Brazil called Petropolis, which sounds, vaguely comic booky. But what happened in Petropolis in the last week was they had terrible mudslides. 136 confirmed dead, more than 200 missing. So probably around 350 people actually dead. It's in the state of Rio de Janeiro. And it's just another example of deforesting a mountainside because they decided to build houses there, uninspected, unregulated. People just went up in the hills, and wherever there was some space, they cut down the trees and put up a house. And the result of all that is entirely predictable mudslides. And actually, the scientists in that province of Brazil have been predicting that this area would have mudslides and people would die for years. And they even created an early warning system, a primitive but effective early warning system where they took plastic pop bottles and they cut off the tops and put little water detectors in them. And when the water level from a rain event reached the detector, sirens went off that basically told people, time to evacuate. But the politicians and the officials didn't actually respond to the sirens. It didn't tell people, yes, you need to evacuate. And so everybody was still just hunkered down in their houses when the hillsides collapsed and, thousands of homes destroyed. And as we know, probably at least 350, maybe more like 400 or 500 people, because it's not well documented. Since people were living there illegally, it's not really clear how many people there were. But this is, you ignore the scientists and this kind of tragedy happens. And we know you can't deforest mountainsides or you get mudslides. And so we shouldn't be doing it literally anywhere in the world. We should have prohibitions against deforesting mountainsides. But it's a terrible tragedy. And our heart goes out to those people in Brazil. But it was a predicted disaster. I mean, literally, scientists said this is going to happen, and it happened. So,
do you remember in the 1950s there was this Welsh mine disaster where a slag heap just basically fell on an elementary school, just the elementary school, like it had been strategically targeted, which it wasn't. But
yeah.
it was kind of a surgical strike somehow against this elementary school, and
I do remember
all of
that,
the children in the town, except for a couple who were sick or playing hooky, died.
Yeah. So anyway, so these things happen and they're predictable, and you should just listen to the scientists, folks, and maybe, people will live. Now off to Colombia. And Colombia has declared hippos an invasive species.
Okay, which they are in Colombia, I think.
Which they are, right? They're from Africa, but the drug lord Pablo Escobar, as we actually reported on this story first a couple years ago, he had brought a bunch of hippos over just for fun because he liked hippos, and so he had billions of drug money.
And while they may look cute, they kill more people per year than any other animal, is what I hear. Worse than lions and tigers is having hippos in your neighborhood.
Right.
Alligators, nothing, all that stuff, not as bad as hippos.
Exactly. They do look cute, but they will kill you. And
they don't even want to eat you. They just want to never, ever, ever see you anywhere near their territory.
Right. And so, unfortunately, this goes back to our definition of environmentalist. Right. Some of the local people are like opposed to this listing because there's actually a tourist trade now in that area of Colombia where people go to see the hippos.
Have all of those tourists come back from those trips?
So far.
Because if I was going to go see hippos, I would really want to be with someone who had a lot of experience, like generations worth with hippos.
Yeah, I know. So far, there haven't been any fatalities, although there have been attacks. But the thing is that the population is estimated right now at about 130, and we're as we know, populations that don't have predation, like nothing eats or limits the hippos, follow that exponential growth curve. And so they're at 130 right now, but it's predicted that within 5 years they'll be up over 500, and within 10 years they'll be in the thousands.
Can anything eat hippos except for when they're babies?
No, an adult hippo in the water is pretty much free from predation. Now, once they get onto land, like if they're trying to go from water to water, something like a lion could conceivably take out a hippo. But for the most part, nothing.
You would want to think very carefully about whether one to try that, though.
Yeah, you'd need the whole pride. It's a big production number. But
maybe some explosives.
Yeah, some high-powered weapons help, right? But,
rocket launcher.
But yeah, so. But it's good that the government of Colombia has declared them an invasive species, because what happens when a species goes into a new area like that, the hippos are driving out the manatees, which are more endangered, and the capybaras, which aren't endangered, but they are the native, fauna that eat the stuff that hippos eat. And so it's good they did it, even though some of the locals are unhappy that they did. All right, on to next story. We've got to move along here. There was a story in physics.org on the 18th. Reintroduction of large mammals could restore world's ecosystems. And this study was done by the United Nations, and they identified 20 large mammals that included like beavers and bison and antelope, that if they were allowed to repopulate the areas where they historically were, it would sequester a lot of carbon. The land would become healthy again because they do their job in the environment of spreading seeds and keeping the soil in the correct level of openness and aeration. And this is what we've been talking about. This is the green future that we've been trying to push here on this show from the beginning.
Yep.
Just let the animals that are supposed to be here back into the environment, and the environment will heal itself. And that was confirmed by this United Nations study that they reported on in phy.org on the 18th. So, open your minds to the idea of large mammals coming back. Just two more quick stories, but we can still take a text if someone wants to. One, potato beetles. There was a study of potato beetles that it's a super pest resistant to many chemicals. And what scientists have discovered is the reason is they are evolving much more rapidly than scientists thought possible. They found that different populations of potato beetles, even though they have resistance to the same chemicals, they developed those resistances using different biochemical strategies, which means they evolve.
Same chemical's not going to work all different places, is what that means, right?
Yeah, and they're resistant to over 50 kinds of chemicals right now. And the result of the study is the scientists said they're going to be resistant to almost everything. All right, last thing, and that is March 11th. Mark it on your calendars. That's our Unplug Nuclear Power event, where we ask people for the 24 hours of March 11th, which marks the date of the Fukushima disaster. Please use as little grid energy as possible grid electricity, because that's a protest against nuclear power in the grid. And we should be done with nuclear power by now, but a lot of people are still pushing it. And this one day of the year, March 11th, withhold your money from the utility companies by cutting back on electricity as much as possible, and just think about remember the victims of Fukushima, past, present, and future. Well, that's it. That's our show. Thanks so much for listening. And thanks to the caller. We appreciate every call and text. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off.